Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Gruesome and Grotesque video. As always, I just do these videos randomly when I come across something that I either read online or see on a daily basis, something that I feel merits posting here within this playlist. Such is the case the other day when I was re-watching the wonderful Jurassic World film, the one that came out a couple of years back, and I was reminded of this very gruesome scene that occurred to one of the characters there involving their death by a dinosaur. And it inspired me actually to go ahead and feature it here because there's a lot of interesting things to talk about that death. Number one, just being one of the first of its kind within the franchise, and then also almost like the lasting impact that it has as well. To this day, it's still considered one of the most gruesome deaths within the entire franchise itself. In fact, you're looking at a representation of it now. It goes by this. Let's go ahead and let's talk about Zara Young, the character from Jurassic World, and her being eaten alive by a mosasaur. We'll talk about that and the implications of it here. So let's go ahead and let's share this information. And as always, I'd love to hear what your comments are regarding this. See if you think as well that this is one of the most horrible ways to go within the entire franchise. So let's go ahead and let's share that here. For starters, I've seen most of the films. I still haven't seen the last one yet. So that new movie that came out, Dominion, I don't know about the deaths associated within that film. So who knows? There may just be an even more horrible one there. But at least for this one, that we're going to definitely talk about Zara Young's character. Zara Young was the personal assistant of the other main character named Claire Dearing. Zara Young was portrayed in the film by Katie McGrath. She had a relatively small role, but it was a notable one. Her character as being the personal assistant was to take care of the two boys within the film, the nephews of Claire Dearing, making sure that when they arrived to Jurassic World that they were handled from the beginning, presumably up until the day that they would leave that vacation, and then that way that was her responsibility. Like, she would make sure that they would get to their hotel. She would make certain they'd have tickets ready for everything they need on a daily basis. They even had a little stipend as well. And then they also had, it looks like passes, some special VIP passes given to them by their aunts, and things that way they'd be able to enjoy their stay there. But yes, her role being as the personal assistant basically delegated her as being, for lack of a better term, their babysitter. In fact, it was noted as such in an almost offhanded remark about her being British and how they basically have that status as being a nanny within, like an automatic status of it. So at least that's how the main character Claire was associating Zara with her. Now, I don't know how long Zara was working at that place. There just hasn't been that history within the universe of Jurassic World. Presumably, considering her age, one would think that this is like one of her earlier career jobs, and it seemed like she was dutifully following, like she was someone that was essentially there to make sure that this is starting her career off at a right path, and then no doubt moving towards other type of responsibilities, either with Jurassic World or with other places afterward. More on that though in a minute, because I didn't quite understand why the film almost made it seem like she was bad, like not like an evil character, but just someone that you shouldn't, I guess, feel any empathy with. But I got the impression, and I think others, I remember in the audiences as well, got the impression that no, that this was somebody that faced a really horrible death. Like, if they would have made her more of a bully or someone else that was less careful, less responsible, then I think that would have garnered more sympathy on that end, like from what happens to her. But either way though, I think it went opposite when it came to how she was represented, and the fact that what happened to her next caused people to be shocked at it, because they didn't realize that somebody like this was going to go out in such a horrible fashion. So let's talk about that now. The reason why this death scene is considered by many, including myself, to be the most gruesome within the franchise, there's several big reasons for it. Number one, she's the first woman in the franchise to be visibly killed. I mean, there have been others in some of the other films that you could presume have been killed as well, but it either happened off screen or it was very close calls where they may have survived. Either way, though, you didn't see that stuff there. It's almost like an unwritten rule when it comes to the world of Jurassic Park and mainly big films in general, that you don't see really women get killed in such horrible fashions, but she was definitely the first one. The fact that she was eaten alive by a mosasaur, that definitely counts as being a horrible, horrible way to go, and it happened to be the first woman to do that, to have that happen. Then the next thing is this, that it was a long, drawn-out process. In fact, let's talk about that here. First, she was picked up by that pterodon, very violently, in fact, like basically just grabbed and plucked out of the ground itself, and then she was jumbled back and forth between multiple pterodons, several of them close enough to basically almost pick her apart, but they were able to just grab her and carry her about. And then she was thrown into a large body of water. There's a very specific term associated with that called thalassophobia. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Thalassophobia is the fear of deep bodies of water because of the unknown that's there. Here in this case, you obviously know that there's a mosasaur within it, and myself and others in the audience knowing that, realizing that all of a sudden when she was plucked from the ground, now being thrown into that large body of water, we knew that it was not going to be good, that it was going to be something very bad. Then thrown into that water, landing super deep. I mean, imagine that. That's another fear right there too. The idea that one could almost drown in that moment if they're not able to get up to the surface of the water. Then being attacked by multiple pterodons, this time almost spearheading into the actual body of water itself, trying to grab her. One of them finally grabbing her and then about to take her away to another long drawn-off death. And then boom, it finally happens. That's when that giant mosasaur comes up. It was neat too because we almost saw a preview of it whenever the mosasaur did that infamous chomp of that giant, of that big great white shark earlier in the film. But it was a tease because it was a tease that was a hidden one. We had no idea at the time that there was going to be a person, in this case this young woman, this poor woman that was going to be a victim of that very same action. But here she was. This mosasaur, no doubt, was probably just acting on reflex at this point because of the many, many times it was fed in an almost similar manner within its universe. And then here it was now having another prey within that same area, same manner, and then it's just doing its routine and getting a nice snack from it too. And then all of a sudden, it unfortunately involved this poor Zara Young, and then she was swallowed alive. So long drawn out process, right? That's another reason why it's considered so gruesome. And then the third one is what the main video is about here, the implications of being swallowed alive, which is one of the worst ways, just absolutely horrible ways that one can think about, because you're there, you're in somebody's, in this case, this animal's mouth, and you have no idea, no way to get out, and the only thing that's going to happen to you now, the implications of it are just horrendous to even think about. But first, let's talk about that next here. What would have happened to her? What would have happened to herself after she was swallowed? I'm surprised that there wasn't much discussions on this on YouTube. I tried to see if there was other videos of people talking about that, but no, I didn't really see much associated with that. So here's my theories, and then some of this I've also read, not just on some Reddits, but also on some other articles online. That's the nice thing about the passage of time, is that people have dedicated some articles and other theories as to what could have happened to her. Again, it goes to show her death was someone that probably the makers of the film had no idea that there would have been a lasting impact like this. They probably thought she was just a one-off character, somebody that was just going to be, another interesting way for someone to die within the world of Jurassic Park and the franchise, and in this case it being Jurassic World. But no, her death still stings. It still rings within people's minds, so much so that people are talking about it in articles and Reddits, and in my case, this YouTube channel here with regards to this video. So yeah, the fact that we're talking about it here shows what kind of impact her character had, that people liked her right from the get-go, and that her having this horrendous death just truly, made it last longer than it should have. But yeah, here's what could have happened to her if she was swallowed alive by this mosasaur. Number one was, and this is the most, in a way, horrible way to say it, most humane way, was she could have been instantly killed. And this is why. Apparently, and some articles I was reading pointed this out too, it showcases that the mosasaur has an inner set of teeth. There's the longer ones, the ones outside, basically lining the rim of the mouth, but then on the inside there's those inner teeth there. We saw the infamous shot of the mosasaur for the longest time in the trailers that they were showing it chomping down on that pterodon. That was really sneaky too, because the previous trailers you saw no indication of a person in that same shot, but now within the film itself, obviously there was poor Zara Young there within that the actual mouth. But yeah, the inner teeth, you can see if they're aligned in that way and Zara's in her position in that way, like when it comes to just being above the tongue, once those teeth chomped down, then the inner teeth would have impacted her. They would have clamped down on her as well. Instant death. So that's the most humane way one can think of could have happened to her. In fact, and some people pointed out on little snippets, you can see that she's actually trying to almost claw herself out of the mouth. She realized in that split second what was about to happen to her, the absolute horrible way, obviously about the next couple of moments, and there she was trying to frantically get out. But if that truly did happen, where the inner teeth basically did their magic right at that moment, then it would have been instant death. She wouldn't have to have worried about anything else afterward. That's one way. The other way, which was the worst way to go, was let's say they chomped down, but she was not in their direct path. Let's say instead she was actually going down the throat. Can you imagine that? Like, how long would she have lasted at that point? She basically would have been swallowed alive and then going into a mouth, into, in this case, the throat, and then beyond, and then finally going into the stomach itself. Let's talk about that next, because that brings up another subject. How long could she have lasted within that mouth? I'm sorry, within that stomach of the mosasaur. The problem is there's no history on this, as far as, like, let's say somebody being swallowed by a comparable sized animal, like let's say a large whale, or maybe even a blue whale, and so on. So there's no indication of history showcasing how, what the time period is as far as somebody lasting just minutes or lasting a long while longer. So a lot of this is just purely speculative. If it was the more humane way, then she could have died within minutes. The idea is that if she was in there within this poor young girl, if she was there within that stomach, lack of oxygen or having whatever else is considered the insides of the mosasaur, causing, again, just having either gases or nitrogen, I read in one other one, but primarily just lack of oxygen, she would have passed out within a couple of minutes at most, and then that would have been it. It would have been her just basically dying at that point and not having to worry about being eaten alive and having a slow decomposition. But no, if it was the worst way possible, where let's say there was oxygen there wasn't any water that was drowning her, there was nothing else that was impacting her directly, she could have had then a very long, prolonged death within that area. Can you imagine that? That would have been the absolute most horrible, gruesome way for anyone to go. Again, the film only gives that brief hint. It gives you the idea that she was swallowed alive. When you think about it further, you realize she truly could have had the absolute worst way to go. Everyone else that died, let's say by either that Indominus Rex or the T-Rex or the Raptors and so on, they all had a quick death. They all were either chomped on the face, or they were torn in half, or they were swallowed, eaten by the T-Rex and so on. They died though pretty quickly. It would have been horrible, like a painful death, but still it would have been quick. But in her case, being within that stomach, realizing the situation, and then let's play on that too. Imagine it being an enclosed space. Imagine it being very claustrophobic as well. Imagine it being just pitch black. Obviously, there's not going to be any light whatsoever in there. And here you have this stomach churning and churning, like whatever type of acid is in there, whatever else is in there, just basically causing her, anything that she touches, to feel acidic, knowing that she's going to be able to she's not going to be able to do anything about it, but she's going to frantically try to get out, but she can't. She can't do anything. This acid is then just slowly but surely eating her alive. Anywhere she puts her face at, anywhere she puts her hands at, it's just eating at her, and then it's causing her to feel pain for who knows how long. That's the implications of this. That's why I think that her death still has a resounding impact, because everyone immediately added 2 plus 2, thinking that no, she survived and she went into that stomach and she was basically decomposing alive. Like, it's just horrible to think about it, because it's just one of the worst, absolute worst ways to go within the entire franchise. Even if, let's say, she happened to have a long blade with her, something to try to escape with, she cuts anything outside of the stomach, there's going to be blood that comes in. There's going to be something else gushing in, or the mosasaur would have realized it and done something to regurgitate her. I mean, it would have been bad either way. She would have been either drowning within whatever contents that were coming into the stomach, or she would have drowned outside if the mosasaur regurgitated her. A horrible, horrible way. And again, this all because of the fact that she was swallowed alive. This is just an example of how long she could have lasted. There's the idea too that even if she was there in the stomach, and she was there for a good long while, she might have even been alive when that mosasaur began to eat that Indominus Rex. At the final climax of the film, when it grabbed the Indominus Rex and then went into that lagoon all the way down, she was probably still alive when it started to eat that Indominus Rex, and then making things even more, let's say, claustrophobic, with all those contents of this dead animal now being shoved next to her. Just horrible way again. This is why it's so gruesome, because this marked her death. A woman in the film, in this franchise, the first a woman to be killed on screen, and this was going to be her last moments. Horrible way. Again, calling back to what I was mentioning earlier, I don't know why the film made it seem like she was supposed to be so, I don't know, standoffish, not evil, not bad, but not someone you should sympathize with, because it did the opposite at that point. Again, she was someone that was looking to do her duties in a responsible manner. In fact, there was that one point where she was even witty enough, she was smart enough, savvy, to realize that when Claire was accidentally going to double book something else happening later that day, that's when she said, no, you already have another thing scheduled. And so she did her job. Like, in other words, she was making sure that she was smart enough to realize what her boss's hours were at all times, and then that way there would be no issues later on. That gave me the impression too that poor Zara was someone that was working long hours, probably at a low to bad salary, again making her dues within her newish career. She was someone that was probably just not ignored, but someone that wasn't given too much attention within that location there. Just someone that was just trying to get by, make her dues. I mean, yeah, she was on the phone when she was there taking care of the boys, making wedding plans is what it seemed like, but she was doing everything that was being asked of her. That's the impression that I got. And it was those kids who decided to just run off and make things worse for her. And if you're wondering like why a lot of people feel more sympathy on her, is because later later on in the film too, she felt genuine concern for the boys. There's other people that if the kids just ran off and they didn't want to take responsibility for it, they could have just said, I quit. I'm leaving. I don't care. They could have just shut off and not giving any news about what was happening at that point. But no, she didn't. She constantly kept Claire up to date as to what was occurring. She wanted to make sure that she was finding them. In fact, pretty much for the rest of the moments of her life within the film, she was looking out for them. She was trying to find them. She was trying to, see where they were located at. She was trying to make sure that they were okay. And then even then, right before she was picked up by that pterodon, there was that brief moment where her last words were something along the lines of that they shouldn't be out in the open. She was still caring for them. But then that was it. She was just plucked from the sky and then given the most gruesome death, I believe, within the entire franchise. Horrible, horrible stuff. And then finally, almost like as a nod to how much people, shouldn't care for her, nobody asked about her afterwards. You notice that too? That was another thing that left an impression on the film. Claire didn't, neither did the boys. Nobody was asking about, what happened to Zara, like what happened to her. It's almost as if she never existed at that point. And so it was just another thing that we're supposed to believe when it comes to the unimportance of her. But I think still that's why she has such a lasting impact to this day. But let me know what you guys think about this gruesome way to go. Zara Young, swallowed alive. How long did she last within that mosasaur? What could have happened to her? Love to hear what your comments are below. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.